There's someone is joining us by Zoom. Welcome to the September 3rd, 2024 meeting of the Town of Camden Select Board. Our meetings are broadcast live on Spectrum Cable TV channel 1303 and web streamed at youtube.com/Town of Camden, Maine, all one word. And for those of you wishing to participate remotely, there is a link to the Zoom meeting that you can find on our website to participate in tonight's meeting, should you so wish to do so. And if you want to participate by Zoom and have a comment that you'd like to make, just make sure that we see you or unmute your
You push the mic a little closer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, appreciate that. Yeah, if you are on Zoom, just wave and make sure that we know that you're there so that we can acknowledge you and include you. So with that said, I would invite any public comment on non-agenda items this evening. It looks like Wendy. Wendy, pick me. Please step up, state your name and
Wendy Andresen, Cove Road. The other day, I had the misfortune of having to use the restroom at Lake Beach. And I have to tell you, I was revolted and nauseated about the conditions there. For a minute, I thought I was in a refugee camp in a third world country. It was so disgusting. And the door doesn't even shut tight. Someone at least was thoughtful enough. They left a folding chair there so you could prop the door closed. But it was despicable. I mean, Camden can do better than that. And mercifully, at least it did flush and there was paper. But it made the restrooms at the public landing look first rate by comparison. Although when I went in there on Monday, I noticed too late, there was no toilet paper and there were no paper towels. So, and I noticed someone talk at one point about a self-cleaning bathroom. I want to know exactly what that is and how do I get one? Because I'm tired of that job. And I have to say, I am outraged by the fact that our one downtown public restroom is in a paid parking area. So that means people have to pay for parking to use the toilets. I just think that that's shameful. And we have only one chamber of commerce and it's in a paid parking area, but really people have to pay for parking to use the toilet. That you don't think that looks unfriendly to tourists? I think that's really bad news. Anyway, onto Montgomery Dam, I know this is fragmented. I have to tell you that residents are suspicious and angry because it seems like the powers that be are sneaky and devious. It seems like back channel deals are being cut and money is being spent on unsanctioned actions. We feel like this is abuse of power. I've talked to a lot of people who have said this same thing. We don't trust you to be fair, open, and honest. We don't trust you. Are you hearing that, folks? We feel like your intent to destroy the dam was there at the outset, and you weren't even considering options to save it. You speak, Susan and Allison, speak of legacy. What about the legacy that was left us in the form of Montgomery Dam? We want to preserve it and protect it. That's our legacy. We need to keep it and make it beautiful again. Let's protect and preserve it. And get some realistic estimates about what it would cost to repair it and not totally rebuild it from the ground up. Not just one estimate. Let's get several estimates and find the best one. It sure looks like the estimates that we're getting are being padded to line someone's pockets. And what about the stench that would be created by a fish ladder with seagull poop and dead fish everywhere? Other fish ladders in the state are not in downtown areas, and the Montgomery Dam is not a good location for one. You think it's expensive to repair the dam? What will it cost us in the future to maintain several and repair several fish ladders by comparison? You think it'll be less? Really? Camden residents are smart enough to know when they're being scammed. The whole project is a total dumpster fire. Simply repairing the dam and not adding a fish ladder is actually the least expensive option and the one we should be allowed to vote for. Give us that simple option on the ballot. I had a conversation with someone in a position of authority at the public landing. I can't mention any names, but this person said, these people are a bunch of idiots to think that they can destroy our dam after it's been here all this time and loved by the town citizens. That's it. That's my rant.
Thank you. Has anyone else got
It's
non-agenda items? At this time, yeah, non-agenda items. Any other non-agenda items from the public? No, seeing none. We'll move on to approval of our minutes from, oh, hi, Tom. Approval of minutes from our August 20th meeting. Any corrections, deletions, additions?
Yeah, I saw a minor thing on the second page under the November ballot. It refers to the citizen's position, and it says, it characterizes it as the citizen's position is regarding land use, when actually it's a, oh, that's line 66, if you're looking at that. It's regarding fees for carbon use rather than land use.
So when there's a substantive correction such as that, Audra, and we're looking at a warrant article. Do you see the?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Your microphone, Audra, is not.
Sorry. Yep, I see it. So we could change it to citizens petition for carbon cashback credits from land use.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other?
Just an instance of manger is back again,
Oh, manger, not manager.
but I thought the minutes looked pretty good this time, so thank you, and I would move to approve them as amended.
Sure, I'll second that.
Second, great. All those in favor? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, 500. Excellent. Moving on to item number 3 is a public hearing for a new establishment for a liquor license at Winona's LLC, 31 Elm Street. Do we have anyone here to speak to this item? Yes, please do. Come up and introduce yourselves, and so we can get to know you and you can tell us about your new restaurant.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Devin. This is Hannah.
I'm Hannah. We have, we're not nervous at all. We have a lovely space up the street in the 31 Elm Street building, or the middle unit, previously occupied by Goods, and before that, Zoot Coffee. We want to have just a small, fun restaurant. We're hoping for a beer and wine license only for the liquor. We hope to do, some fun wines, sake, sherry, and lovely food. Devin is our chef. He's worked throughout New England. He's very talented. I feel like I get to say that, and I hope you all can come in and agree with me. They're hoping just to have a small, fun dinner restaurant.
So will you just be dinners?
Just dinners, yes.
And when do you project to be open?
We are hoping for the end of September. We're still crossing our fingers for that, but it's looking more like the beginning of October. Trying to get to the end of the summer and beginning of the fall, which fall is the best season. So,
anyone have any questions for Devin or Anna regarding their application?
Looks great.
Yeah,
Welcome.
yeah, it
thank
does
you.
look
We're
great.
This has
Welcome.
been the dream. We're very excited to be here.
Oh,
Is this your first restaurant?
This is the first time owning, not first time working. but
Okay.
Awesome,
first time being in full control.
awesome.
That's
Well,
awesome.
Um,
I was,
So I guess we'll just take a motion to approve the license.
Sure, so moved.
second.
All right. Any further comments? No? All in favor? Great. Well, welcome. Congratulations. I hope
Thank
everything
you.
goes well. I
Thank you
look
very
forward
much.
to it.
Thank
Good
you. We're
luck.
very
Thank you so
excited.
much.
Thank you.
That's fun. A new restaurant. Okay, select board reports. Has anyone got anything to report? Chris, have you got anything exciting?
No, I don't have anything exciting, but I do wonder
Doesn't have
if,
to be exciting.
did we get any interest? I know the last time we spoke about me not doing the Midco Solid Waste Board position. Did we get any interest from that? I don't know.
I believe we have one
Just one.
applicant so far. Yep.
When do we plan to close on that? You know?
I would have to look at how we've advertised it, but I believe it closes this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if people are interested in that, being involved with Midco Solid Waste, then we would definitely want to encourage them to go ahead and apply.
Great, thank you. What you got?
Continuing on the Midco solid waste theme. Thank you, Chris. I was gonna ask about that, why that wasn't on the agenda. But yeah, we had a Midco solid waste meeting. It's the most new members we've ever had. I was elected vice chair and treasurer. Kern Lade is the new chair. We had a very good meeting. We went over the year-end financials. We ended last year well ahead of the curve, I suppose you could say. Way over budget on the leachate portion of the budget. But one thing that I'm getting a lot of questions about, or a few, which is a lot in municipal government. Some people may have noticed there's a dock out there in the North Quarry, we call it, and that is it's a floating dock, and it's not because we want you to put your kayak out there or anything. In fact, it has a no trespassing sign for the time being, but it's going to be a pump was just installed to start working on pumping down that North Quarry, which is all very clean water, actually with tons of fish in it. It's a good spot for a minnow trap if you're interested.
That's the quarry across the street from the,
It's on the
The
same side of the
entrance to-
street as
Quarry House,
nope, that's Drinkwater Quarry.
or the other side?
I don't know why. That's actually Quarry Hills Stormwater Pond, which is much smaller. The North Quarry is the one that it's the big one that's right next to the, recycling
okay.
area.
Thanks.
And the water has been monitored there for many, many years. We've been working very hard to keep the water quality very high there. And so, but the water has risen so much after what we call the gut, which is the space between the water-filled quarry that you see that's open water and the landfill, which used to be an open quarry filled with water that just had trash put in it. So the big challenge has been to separate the clean water from the landfill so that the clean water doesn't go into the landfill and then become leachate and need to be treated. So as the water has risen in that clean water quarry, it's believed that it is actually migrating over to the waste-filled quarry and drastically increasing the amount of water that has to be pumped. So our bill last year was $300,000. And so now we are starting to pump down that water-filled quarry so that hopefully it doesn't keep adding to the waste-filled quarry. So that's the big exciting news over there.
Where does that water go?
It goes, that's one of the things about using the pump system rather than eventually it might be a gravity system where it's just like the other quarry where it just kind of overflows. But for now, it goes into a wetland system, which is adjacent to the Midco Solid Waste actually owns a lot more land in between the Greenfield or Linden Lane subdivision. So there's a whole kind of wetland system there. And then that drains out to a little brook that goes underground on Lime Rock Street. Actually, it completely disappears, then reemerges around Jacobs Ave, goes underneath Belmont, then winds around behind Franny's or the old Francine's, and then goes underground again at Fry Street. It's actually can be a sizable stream when it really starts raining. So the good thing about this is we'll be able to pump down the level during dry season and then be able to, much like we have to turn the leachate pump off when it really rains so that it doesn't overflow as much in the sewer system. This is the stormwater system, but we'll also be turning that off so that it can be not adding to flooding problems on Lime Rock Street and elsewhere.
Isn't she amazing?
This is my favorite topic.
I love this, that you are so immersed in it and that you got such great information. I'm really grateful. Thank you. Ken,
Nothing to add.
okay. And Tom, anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you for, Tom is far, far away and he's up in the middle of the night to be at this meeting, so. And nor do I, so we'll move on to the town manager's report.
Well, can I just add one thing?
Yes, of course.
We all know, and this is maybe what the Andreassens were going on earlier too, but the report in the most recent, I believe, Camden Herald concerning the dam piece, it's unfortunate the slides that were selected as being the photographs for that piece, because there was a lot of discussion in the meeting of the McGonagall River Committee about A, what to call them, and B, certain things that were going to be removed. So it looks to me like the photos that got put into the paper were the photos that the group wanted to alter. So it's just important for people in town to know that those items that were put in there in the paper were items that were really being debated about and looking to change. I believe even the one, it still had the bridge that people said, no, we're going to, we want that removed. But I think what happened is the paper got a copy of those that were being looked at in that meeting for the members to go ahead and make suggestions for alteration, of which there were suggestions made. And I think those got published, even like with the title of dam reconstruction, that was something that was discussed in the meeting, that really isn't the title that we're going to be looking to put for such a thing. And there was discussion about it, but when I saw that noted in the paper with those photos, it just wanted people to be clear that was certainly not the final version.
Right.
It was, those were provided at the meeting, and there was discussion about them a lot, actually. So I just would, the only clarification piece is that those were for discussion. They were not a final entitlement or a final design by the group. And I just didn't want people to have the idea that that was the final offerings.
Right.
But there was actually a lot of discussion about it. And when I saw that as kind of the lead, I was like, oh no, that misrepresents somewhat the discussion, because that was the beginning. It wasn't the end.
Yeah, thanks
So.
for that clarification.
You were
Chris.
there too, Ken.
Yes,
Do you
yes,
agree?
and I do agree
Okay.
that they chose a snapshot in time, and that is not the final presentation. In fact, I was going to ask, has the MRCAC scheduled a public presentation?
I've not seen it scheduled yet.
So
No, I saw something on the
talk
town
about it
calendar.
in my update.
So I have lots of comments too, but I'm holding them back because it's not on the agenda and not an appropriate time, but it makes it
Okay.
harder when I've been asked not to go to those meetings and then we're not discussing it here and then it turns into a discussion and So I do think we should have a discussion sometime, but
Yeah, we definitely should. But thank you for the clarification.
It's just a
I think-
clarification. That's all I wanted to make.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Audra, Town Manager's Report.
All right, well, I'll lead off with that because it was asked. So the public outreach meeting for the Maguntacook River Restoration Project that was tentatively scheduled for September 12th is going to be postponed. So I really need to reassess the project budget, particularly the time allocated to the landscape architect. So, that's something that we're going to put on hold for a little while we're able to relook at the project budget and kind of rescope a few things. So that's, at this stage, we don't have a date for when that's going to happen. So to the rest of my report, taxes were committed on August 30th and the mill rate was set at $10.50. So Camden is certified, the certified ratio is 100%, which is exactly where we want to be.
whoa.
So yeah, that's where we want to be. The tax bill distribution is 63% to the school districts, 28% to the town, and 9% to the county. The deadline for abatements will be March 3rd of 2025. Taxes for the first half of the year will be due on October 15th of 2024, and the second half of the year will be due on April 15th, 2025. So this will also all be on the website and, reminders go out and everything, but I thought, announcing it as part of my report would be helpful.
Can we go over, what was the mill rate before?
$13.80.
So that's a really sizable.
Significant
Yeah.
decrease in the mill rate. So the boiler at the public safety building has been replaced with a heat pump and a hot water tank, and this is going to be a major reduction in energy costs. And we were able to do this project without coming back to the select board and asking for any additional money because we had savings from the roof repair project for the public safety building. If everybody remembers, that's something that we budgeted for this year. So Tri-State Roofing, which is a Camden-based company located on John Street, offered to do the repairs to the public safety roof for free. So they really wanted to support the local public safety functions of the town. So
That's
I
awesome.
really, I'd like to thank Tri-State Roofing. If we can think of another way to more formally thank them, I think it'd be a great thing to do because they're an excellent local company. We've had them do a number of projects for the town. They're very fast, they're very efficient, and they do really high quality work. And this is just a really generous donation that they made to the town. So anything that we can do to honor them more formally, I think would be very, very worthwhile and deserved. And it allowed us to do a bunch of other, work that really needed to be done. So Public Works also patched a broken stormwater line that was causing a sinkhole in front of the public safety building. And while they were doing this, they made some ADA improvements at the same time. So there's still work that needs to be done to the rest of this line, but it's a pretty significant repair to that section of it. We have requests for proposals that are due on September 6th to regulate short-term rentals. So this is to the software to help us do that. So this is going to come in front of the select board at your next meeting on September 17th. We also have 2 bids that we received today for a bond anticipation note for the infrastructure improvement bond that was approved by voters in June. So the ban will be for $10 million over 2 years. So this is just sort of the first step. Eventually, it will be a full bond, but in that sort of interim period, while we need funds to move projects forward, but we, don't want to pay the full interest rate on the full amount that we're borrowing. It's that sort of interim step. So this is also going to come in front of the select board on September 17th. MDOT is doing a biannual inspection of the Route 1 bridge and the Washington Street Bridge or the Bakery Bridge tomorrow. So we're going to be doing a drawdown of the Montgomery Dam tomorrow morning so that they can do this inspection. And that's my updates.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Item number 6 are approvals of the special town meeting warrant articles. And we've gone over these at some length, but we can revisit if there are any lingering questions. I think we're at the stage of final language on these.
I would say at this stage, any of the the notes, if there's, anything that you think is important to have included in the notes, that might be something that you want to look at. I think most of the articles themselves, you've been over them several times, so they should be familiar to you.
Yeah, I wanted to point out maybe a couple of typos. In Article 2, the sentence about the full text of the proposed ordinance is available, et cetera, it is repeated twice.
Oh, yep, I see what you mean.
And in Article 4, on the note, these funds must by committee by 2024, I'm guessing it must be supposed to read, these funds must be committed by 2024.
Yes.
On
Yes,
Article
Allison.
2, I wonder if we could make it a little bit more explicit that it applies to one property and it's the Elm Street School, or this is to allow the school district.
Mhm.
I feel like most people are just, that's what they're going to try. They're going to spend a lot of energy trying to figure out what this is, and what they really want to know. Oh, it's that thing the school wants to do. And if there's a way to say that, remove the restriction of residential
You don't
uses
think
on
the-
street level from rental structures that are owned by.
School administrative district, don't think that covers it?
I guess that's my question. My experience has been that erring on the side of, I
More
always,
information.
yeah, I mean, always expect that people know less. I mean, I don't want somebody to read. It's just really a lot of kind of zoning stuff. Most people don't know what zone is what, and
I mean, this article applies to that one property. There isn't another property owned by the school. I'm asking this sort of as a question.
Yes.
There isn't another property owned by the school administrative district to which this would apply. Is that correct?
Correct.
So is it appropriate to name the property specifically, or is that too narrow?
I think that that's accurate.
I
So
mean-
we could say this only applies to whatever the address is,
Would
in
that-
the
do you
former
think that
Elm
would-
Street School building.
Would make it easier for
Yeah,
people to
yep.
comprehend the,
Yes.
yeah,
I mean, I think we should just try to help people out. It's
yeah, who haven't been following it as closely.
right. Most people really haven't been. They're going to be
Right.
also, since the turnout for this election is going to be,
Epic.
it's going to be huge, and most people are going to be there to vote for, one thing. They will have not been following. I'm not saying one thing necessarily, but sort of. So just making this as easy as possible
Mhm.
for them.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't make it too narrow.
As to be misleading or directive, but
Well, if you put it in the note,
right.
I think the note is just offering additional explanation without changing the content of the warrant.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we should be a little less fearful of just sort of telling people what's going on sometimes. That's the most
Yeah.
consistent feedback I get. And even when I think we've gone through and made it pretty clear, I still, my husband comes back and he's like, calls a bunch and just, I'm like, that's that thing we talked about.
oh, yeah.
He's like, oh,
No,
okay.
no,
that-
Could someone go ahead and maybe it's Audra, maybe it's Allison, speak to the whole, we've discussed this before, and maybe Tom remembers as well. The select board voted 5-0-0. Sometimes that can give the impression to the public that the select board everybody on the select board wants this particular thing, and it ends up being a leaning bias as compared to just saying, I think the intent of the statement being in the warrant is that the select board voted to put this on the ballot for people to vote. Tom, do you remember much discussion about that as far as some of maybe the reason why that we have to say this, the specific words in there?
You don't have to have it in there at all if you don't want to. It's sort of like a guide for voters, and past select boards have chosen to do it. And there's been different ways this was represented over the years. And I think the most recent time this was discussed, the select board sort of landed on the select board voted instead of the select board recommends, because the select board is just voting to move this forward to voters and put it on a warrant. You're not necessarily personally voting this way or making a,
In favor of.
yeah,
the-
you're not
of the
necessarily
article.
make a
Yeah.
recommendation that people vote in favor of it. All you've
Right.
done is approved it being put on the warrant. So I think that was the discussion. That's how you got to the language around the select board voted. There's no requirement that this is included on the warrant. The reason that it has been is because I think that voters have given feedback to select boards that it's useful to know the way you voted. And I think there's some instances where there'll be certain warrant articles where it's not like a 500 circumstance. And that's a good signal to people that they might want to do some more research on that particular,
Mhm.
Item that's on the ballot.
Again, so it does ends up with a leaning bias, because they might think, oh, they instead of saying we want people's voice on this, they're thinking that we want whatever this thing is to be voted yes. Anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, I hear your concern. I just, Ken, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, no, I understand. Now I understand. But as a voter, I always thought that this meant that the select board had voted in favor of it. And I think it is misleading that when it looks like the board is unanimously supporting or endorsing whatever the article is. And I think either since this select board voted 500 actually is not necessary and doesn't carry any information, perhaps we could either eliminate it or word it such that it says that our current understanding is that the select board voted to place it on the warrant. We didn't vote in favor or against it, but we voted simply to place it on the warrant.
Allison?
We've gone around and around about this. I remember when I was just in the audience watching Leonard Luckner convince everybody to not have that recommendation anymore because he was trying to advocate against something that the select board had recommended, and very much didn't want that on the ballot for that reason. And it went off of it for a while, and we got a bunch of feedback that it was really unhelpful. Most people don't have a lot of time, and I think the reason we got to this, the select board voted stuff is, it's cowardly on our part. I don't believe that we should be there are instances where we want to just put something out as a straw poll and be clear about that. We're trying to take everybody's temperature. But overall, we collect lots of public input throughout the process. And the reason that we run and are elected is because we've agreed to do the research and agreed to try to come up with what we think would be best. And we should not be putting things on the ballot that are very, very serious and saying, oh, well, I'm just going to take everybody's temperature on zoning. We know perfectly well that the average person doesn't have time to go over this in detail. And so I think in this case, we all talked about everything. And when we voted for these items, we did vote that we were recommending them. I didn't hear anybody say, well, I don't really think we should be using the TIF funds for stormwater and sewer, but I want the voters to decide. I just think that's unfair, and that we should be brave enough to say we've done the research and this is what I think would be best, and that it's very helpful to people when they do get to see, oh, it was 3-2. So I'm going to look into that to understand. But some things are just like rubber stamp, that we're setting the interest rate, we're doing all these things. People need to be able to run through that and be like, okay, this isn't controversial, this isn't controversial, we're just getting the job done. So I liked the recommended language better. I think that when we should delineate when there are things like the non-binding, like I'd like to take it off for the Historic Resources Committee, the Article 7 non-binding, because there we really did say, we're just trying to take everybody's temperature on this. So I could see in that one, we would take it off, but overall, I know that when I'm not on the select board anymore, I expect the people that I elect to at least be brave enough to print on the ballot what they think. And then you can vote people out, but it's our duty to give a recommendation, and it's dangerous if we're going to put things out there and say, well, I wasn't actually in favor of this.
So you are in favor of a leading bias being written into the piece, or take that as a bias as compared with
A bias?
a bias of being
The way you're
for something.
characterizing it is,
Then this is what we recommended, but I don't think it's what
You
we
don't want
want
people to know what we recommended?
That's correct. I don't think we want them to
Tom would like to weigh in. Tom?
Thank you. Seems like we talk about this twice a year. And I do think it varies on the board from particular issue to issue. I remember for the marijuana question that we had a year or two ago, there was many members of the board that wanted to move that to voters. They felt like that was a voter decision. And they expressed that. But then, of course, when it was written on the ballot, it looked like the select board was in favor of marijuana 4-1. So I'm actually in favor of removing this altogether. I do think that it's implicit that if it's on the ballot, the select board moved it to the ballot. And then it's up to the voters to do their own research. That is part of being an informed citizenry. And whether people do it or not, I really hope they do, because it really makes for better outcomes if people educate themselves. But it is up to them, and it's not our job to spoon feed them or to baby them in any way. If they've listened to the meetings and read the newspaper and done some research, they should come to the ballot informed and ready to make their own decisions.
Thank you. Allison?
People aren't going to do that. We've had many instances of people voting down things that were, to comply with state law. And it is complicated. I think that if the newspaper they're not putting out a voter's guide. I think if we're going to take this off, we have a responsibility to put out a really clear voter's guide. I can't think of any other way to help signal to people which things might be worth them looking into a little bit more, because I certainly don't want to suggest to them that they should look into things like the day that taxes are due. And, this is the November one, so we don't have that kind of stuff on here, but I think we need to find a way to signal to people which things they would want to spend time researching, because some things are just a matter of, going along with our charter. And
Yeah, this is interesting. I hadn't really thought about it, and it's a little bit of a quandary, because I hear your point, because it does imply that, and yet it was by virtue of all the discussion that we had, the language was crafted and put forward in a way that we all have agreed upon. We've had plenty of opportunities to weigh in on it. So to the extent that this language that's being presented has been agreed upon, we voted, and it was a unanimous vote. The content there's a little bit of a distinction there.
Yeah, certainly we had the discussion and we said, yes, we want these things to go to the voters, but I would not want our vote that we decided that something should be decided
Right.
by the voters.
Right, no,
to
I
be
get your point.
Influenced
Yeah,
because that was not the intent of that item. It was like, yes, this is an important thing. We need a bigger say. It's right that it goes to the town.
mhm.
And I disagree with Allison. I don't think we should give an indication that because this is there, that we want a particular outcome. I don't think that's right. It's just me. I think, yep.
Well, it's like that, it is telling two different things. I think
Mhm.
that if that select board voted with the numbers were accurate and portrayed what we actually thought of the warrant article
Then that's
itself,
something different.
it would be something different. What this is, the information this is conveying is that we
We're all for it.
agree that
Well, that was
understanding
yeah,
the
one
process.
time They changed that because it was this
Yeah.
marijuana thing that catapulted everybody into this spiral of, because it was very uncomfortable. And so that's when that voted and changed, and it allowed some of us that story to be able to say, okay, I'm in support of this going to voters, but without having to put your thumb on the scale. This one, it's obvious, it was all unanimous. So it's not that, it's there, whatever. It's just when there are things that are, I think we haven't been consistent with what we're saying this means. And that's where I do agree with Chris. Mostly because each time we sidestep around and let ourselves come up with language that avoids the discomfort. But
Right, I agree with what Tom said, which was basically that if it appears on the ballot, it's because it has gone through the process. Anybody who understands the process knows that it's not there unless we have voted to put it there. So that this 500 carries no information, and in fact, it carries the implication that we're endorsing it. And I think that, and I think you mentioned this as well, Allison, that some people go into the ballot and the first thing they know about it is they read it and it says that the select board endorses it 500. And that's inaccurate. I think we'd be better serving the people by removing the statement or modifying it to be more accurate to what we actually voted on.
Did you want to comment? Please come forward and so that we can all hear you and see you.
Pat Nelson, I live on Cedar Street. Is there any, it just seems above each article, it'll say select board and it'll say 500 or 531 or whatever it is. Can't it be specified right above each article that the select board wants that to be on the ballot? Or the other way, it would be the select board recommends that you vote this way. Every single one of them doesn't have to, can't the sentence be a little shorter or a little longer on each article so the general public, when they're going to vote, know how you're going to vote for that, or you're just recommending that it goes on the ballot and it's up to us to figure out what we want to vote on, one way or the other.
do you mind me asking I know we shouldn't do like a poll of just one person, but do you think it's helpful to have some of that information on the ballot, what the select board recommends or doesn't, or would?
Yeah, it is to me, but
recommend.
That's
I
different
think
from
I
what
was like,
this says, though.
Ken, I didn't understand. I thought it meant that you were voting, you're in favor of it. Not that you're just saying, yes, let's put this on the ballot,
Right.
and you guys, you, the public, do the research and figure out how you want to vote.
It usually does mean recommends. That's what it always, usually when somebody doesn't think somebody, like when Tom has been very consistent, he voted against the marijuana thing, for instance, didn't think it should go out to voters, was opposed to it, and the rest of us were murky, I guess, with what that really meant. But mostly, I think when we vote, it always has been, I mean, I'm just curious, are you guys all opposed to these things, but you're voting like, oh, we're going to put this out to voters? But I think in this case, for the most
But
part, people vote
above
against
every
things.
article, it always says the same thing. It'll just
Right.
say 500, 411, whatever it is. But
And that is what
isn't
it
there a
meant.
reason, is there any reason that it can't say that the select board wants this to be on the ballot for the public, you can make it shorter, to decide how they want it?
Well, I think-
Or it could say, the select board is recommending that the citizens of Camden vote this way because we've done all the research and we know you haven't done the research because of what you said. I mean, people aren't.
That's what's been done for, the budget committee recommends, the planning board recommends, that's been the history of Camden, is to provide that level. And you can see, the planning board was against it, but the select board said yes.
I mean, I think
So-
there are two different things. We're talking about two different things here.
Right.
And for my purposes, I have been open in, I think we all have weighed in on our position on these various articles. However, we still are entitled to the sanctity of our vote being private. So to the extent that this would reflect, I'm in favor of this article or not, I actually don't think that's an appropriate use of this statement.
Okay,
It's
so
so the process that we have gone through has been one of vetting the language, hearing from stakeholders, and agreeing that it's at a point where it's ready to be presented to the voters we live in a form of democracy where that's the ultimate
okay,
decider.
so that number, the 500,
Just
it just says, we want that on the ballot.
But that's not just. I wouldn't minimize that at all,
Okay.
but to say that it's just that. It's gone through a lengthy
Okay.
process, but I think
Okay.
it's important for people to understand that that's what the process is about without, and I also
For
agree
you,
with
I
you
mean.
that for us to have the courage of our convictions around what these articles do, and I think that in the course of our discussions,
Okay.
we've been pretty transparent.
Okay, so when I
about
go to vote and it says 500,
it just means that we vetted this article and prepared it to put before the legislative body, which is you.
okay.
Well, then we
So-
should take it off because apparently it doesn't mean
It does
to
not.
you what it means to me. I
How
mean,
other people construe that.
because
Okay.
I think it's
all
pretty
right,
irresponsible to put something out to voters that we don't think is a good idea.
well, Okay,
So you had a lot of research to do apparently before you vote.
Yes.
Lavana Snyder, I live in Camden. I was actually listening at home and came in because for the last 2 years, this has been the biggest issue on my mind. And I've had arguments, like even with Dave Merrimont, about what that language means on the ballot. My position is no one's vote should be on our ballot when we go into the ballot booth for any reason. I don't want to know your vote. I go in to make my own decision. So my conversation with Dave Miramont, which by the way, is consistent with almost all my friends who don't understand what that means. Dave didn't. He didn't believe me when I said, oh no, it's not how they voted. It's they voted to put it on the ballot. He would not believe me. We made a bet. He came in to see Katrina. He called me up, said, you win. And he said, I'm so sorry I'm leaving the Senate, because he would have taken it to Augusta to try to make sure it didn't get on the ballot. Because I researched, and I haven't done the new charter, but the old charter, there was no reason to put it on the ballot. And I don't know if the new charter's changed, but I would assume that. So everyone, all my friends, no matter how, what their experiences are, everyone I ask does not understand what it means. And I disagree that because you guys have done all the research, it should go on there, because that's your job. That's why we vote for you. We know you did that. We don't need to know that you had a disagreement. But I do know that I think in our democratic world, you shouldn't go to the ballot box and have any prejudice. And I think a lot of things have passed because people don't understand what that vote means. And they just vote how you guys vote. And that's not really right. People have to do their homework. And if they don't do their homework, that's not an onus on you guys. That's an onus on them. And I also feel that the newspapers actually do a pretty good job of doing the ballot and the issues. And you guys do forums. So, like I said, 2 years has been my biggest issue, because it just doesn't seem right when I go into the ballot that somebody else's vote is on there, no matter what it's for. There should be no bias on our ballot. So I hope you guys come around to that. So thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Lavana. Thank you.
Now, I know Bill isn't, I don't think he's here.
No, I can answer that question. There's no charter requirement for it to be.
Was there on the budget, though?
No.
Not even on that. There was.
No, this is a choice that you make as the gatekeepers of the ballot to include that or not include it.
And it was taken off for a while, and we got a bunch of feedback. So people just disagree on this issue, and that's understandable, and it probably will continue like that forever. And we can all still get along.
How can we bring this to conclusion?
If you'd like all of the votes taken off the warrant, then you can vote to take them off.
I just want it reflected that I'm voting no on that.
Really?
Would someone like to make a motion regarding that? Are we at a point where we're?
Yeah, I would move, I see two ways forward, either change the wording or eliminate the wording. It's much cleaner just to eliminate the wording, so I will move that we eliminate the votes from the ballots.
I'll
Do we
second
have a
that.
second?
Is there a requirement, just a quick question though, is
Yeah.
there a requirement on the planning board side?
No.
So, yeah, I would say remove both then, yeah. That would be my,
Any further discussion?
Just a quick question, does that mean if it then appears on the ballot, we know at least it passed a vote to appear on the ballot by some?
You just
Do
gotta,
you want me to repeat the question so he doesn't have to come up? So we have a gentleman in the audience who asked the question, if an item appears on the ballot, the town ballot, does that mean that folks can assume that the select board voted to put it there? And the answer to that question is yes, unless it's a citizen's petition. Anything that's on the town ballot was placed there by a vote of the select board.
Right.
they'll know that
A
at least
majority
three-
vote of the
like
select board.
3 at least, a majority did. They won't know whether it was 2 to 3 or.
No. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
No, because it says, as I was just curious to see, does it delineate then of which one is a citizen's petition? And it does.
And it does, of course, yeah. All right, all those in favor of removing the vote numbers from the ballots? I have to say I'm in favor. And all those opposed? All right. Interesting. Thank you. That was very,
Thank you.
yeah. Well, thank you for leaving your home to come scampering down here to share that with us. That's important. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your input. We can talk about this more. I think it's really an interesting. Okay. So now that we've taken care of that, any other, we now have to have a motion to approve the warrant as amended with
Shouldn't we
that.
take the note off too then with the same? I'm just kidding. I won't push it too much, but really there's a missing period on
Article 2, business hours. Note.
Well, they're actually in both the repeated places where it says the town website. At the end of hours, yeah, business hours, in both places. I know Ken already said, we said it twice and we can get rid of once, but we still need a period for the one place that it is.
Yes.
Any other additions,
Um,
deletions, corrections, amendments?
What about on the citizens petition? I just want to make sure that this was what was intended to be written. Was placed on the ballot after the town clerk certified that the number of signers of the petitioner was at least equal to 10%. Is that the way it's intended to be, or should it be the number of signers of the
The
petition?
petition.
Petition.
That's it for me.
I guess I'll make a motion then to approve the warrant, given the changes that we've recommended.
I'll second that.
Second? All those in favor?
Oh, do I vote in favor of this or not? I can't. I guess
I know.
now I'm really confused about how I should.
So are you in favor or are you
I-
opposed?
I guess I'm opposed, right? I
Okay,
guess,
so-
but I was in favor. My pro vote, it doesn't matter. I'm opposed, I suppose.
Okay, so 4-1. The motion passes. All right. On to Article 7, Item 7, discussion items. The first one is setting a date for a discussion of the wastewater policies with the town of Rockport. I met with the chair of the Rockport Select Board last week, just for introduction and to get a sense of, just to get to know her a little bit and get to get the lay of the land a little bit more about Rockport. And we do have her letter included in our packet outlining where Rockport stands. And we had talked about a possible meeting on a Thursday afternoon later this month, just to restart the conversation, to look at the specific action items that are put forward in Denise Munger's letter to our board regarding having a committee that would work with Rockport, exploring the wastewater allowance and the resolution of the lawsuit as discussion items. So I guess for our purposes, how would people feel about attending such a meeting? We would have the department heads as well. And start to open up this process for discussion and enable us to move forward and resolve these longstanding questions. Allison.
I'm very much in support of having a public discussion about this. The agenda and sort of defining the scope of the discussion is something I think that needs a little more thought. I think there are questions that Rockport needs to define themselves, sort of Rockport issues, and then on our side, we have our own set of priorities and things that need to be resolved, or questions that we would have in order to be able to have a productive conversation. So it's a lot in one meeting.
Yeah,
I
I
think we
don't
need
see it as
to-
one meeting at all.
Could I make
Yes.
a recommendation? I feel like, given all the changes to both boards since this issue sort of bubbled up in 2020, some setting the table might be a really good first step for both boards. So I think that, having Rockport folks do a tour of the new treatment plant and explaining the plant to them would be some helpful background. They'd also get to see the new facility and the investment that was made there, and we can explain why and what it's doing now. And also having everybody see the presentation on the collection system and all the issues with Camden's collection system, and the purpose of the bond and some of that other background information on questions that other members, both past and current, of the select board have had about things like what's the capacity of the Rawson Avenue pump station, and the capacity of the Bayview Street pump station, and just some of those sort of basic fundamental things that are going to be really important for both boards to have a good understanding of before we move forward with this. So, that's the kind of thing that we would do on our side, so that everybody's got that same understanding of both our treatment plant and our collection system, and also inviting Rockport to give a presentation on their collection system and some of the issues and concerns that they have, and some things that they think are really important for us to understand about their system. Because I think that if we all have that same kind of fundamental knowledge of each other's system, it'll make that conversation we have going forward about some of those thornier issues easier, because we can understand what everybody's challenges are and some of the things that we need to do to get to a resolution.
Do you think that the tour and the presentation on our side could be achieved in one get together, or do we need to, I'm not picturing this as a one-off. I think it's, we obviously have an ongoing conversation that needs to happen, but do you think that those two things could happen on one day, or should we really break it out?
I think probably, with the tour, that could be separate than the meeting where everybody comes together and sort of listens to, a presentation. So I think that we could probably couple those things together.
Okay.
I don't know if we would have the time to do both towns' collection system overview and billing and all that stuff in one night.
But if they were to come and have the tour and then everyone gather here for a meeting afterward.
Yeah,
to
and maybe
explain
we
it.
can set up two meetings at once, one being the Camden meeting and then the Rockport.
To schedule both.
Yeah, just have the background information on everybody's kind of, current status and issues and how everything works.
Allison.
I don't like the idea of us all taking separate tours that, Camden staff gives Rockport that seems unnecessarily separate. I think maybe we could work out some of the details moving forward, but why, our Camden, any tour of the plant that includes all of the select board of any town needs to be open to the public anyway. So let's think about how that,
I'm not sure I understand the issue. I
that's
mean,
them
if-
holding a meeting at the Camden Wastewater Treatment Plant with Camden Town staff and intentionally excluding us. That just seems.
Oh, no, we wouldn't be.
In the
we
past,
would- no,
we've
we wouldn't be
done joint
excluded.
tours. Like
No, we
before,
wouldn't be
used to do
excluded.
joint
We-
tours.
no,
can
we
all
wouldn't,
go on a
but
tour
we were-
together and hear the same information.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be excluded. We were just talking about separating the things out in order, like, if not everybody was available to come, and some of us have had a tour, if we had the tour, I think if I understand you correctly, have a tour and then convene a combined meeting of the two boards and department heads and the public.
I mean, maybe we can just have a couple tour dates where anybody from either
Sure.
board can go
Yeah.
when it works.
Yeah, I guess just for timing things, we're not trying to shoehorn too much into one night.
Right. So that by the time we do get together to have the presentation about the collection system, most people will have had the opportunity to have a tour
Yeah.
of the plant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I just don't see it as, a lot of this isn't necessarily about seeing this or that either. And the presentation that I would, there are many questions beyond just the collection system that would impact our ability to be able to take Rockport's wastewater, like the quality of what's in the effluent, coming out into our harbor. And I think it's going to be a mix of questions that we already know the answer to and questions that might take additional resources in order to find out. But
Well, Rockport has a timeline that was put forth in their, the referendum that they passed. And it requires that some actions be taken. And one of them is to begin this conversation with Camden. And they're looking at, if we don't have a committee formed by a specific date, they're looking for us to put together, their committee sunsets in March of 2025. And so they're looking for us to have a task force, to parallel the items that are brought up in their, in Denise's letter. So I think to the extent that we,
I agree with Allison that a tour is a distraction. It takes a lot of
Well-
time and it's not necessary. A 5-minute presentation on the current state of affairs could probably get it done.
that's fine.
But
I'm
the-
not
but
wedded
the-
to there being a tour.
Yeah.
The
The discussion, sure, as long as it's a clear agenda with decent objectives. And even if it has to be introductory at first, but I'm with Allison that I don't think a tour is necessary if a 5-minute presentation can do it, and it can probably be done in 5 minutes. They want to get to some other issues, and let's get to the meat, not have the distraction.
I mean, and I like the idea, one of the things I like about this is meeting with the Rockport Select Board and not, their whole committee thing is not necessarily the way I think it makes sense to go about this. They did already have a committee. I followed along with that quite a bit. I read the reports. I learned a ton from reading those recommendations. A lot of good quality work was done that anybody who loves this topic could read over a bunch of Rockport stuff, I think, and sort of understand where they're coming from. But this new committee that they've created is an entirely new committee, and they're kind of getting up to speed on the issues a little bit. And I like the idea of engaging with the Rockport Select Board and it's a lot of new people on both sides. And, but the committee part and feeling like we need to make sure that we're ready to try to meet their deadline for their task force. That's a lot of staff resources to be able to answer questions, and their questions and their urgency is different than what our urgency is. And our voters just approved $12.5 million for us to work really hard on our known issues of the collection system. And so I want to make sure that we can stay focused on where we know we're making improvements too. But I like the idea of talking with the Rockport Select Board.
So.
I see Tom has his hand up.
Yeah, Tom.
Thank you.
For me, the most important aspects of this are the data. I want to know the capacity of our plant, the capacity of our pump stations, Rockport's output now, their intended future output. I want to know data about what we're putting into the harbor, ways that we can improve what we're putting into the harbor, or ideally what we're putting into even further out into Penobscot Bay. That's much more important to me than, seeing a centrifuge and a SCADA system. Those things are fun to see, and if you know about them, it's a massive upgrade for the town of Camden. But it's not the decision points that we need to base our decisions on. And I agree with Allison in that this should be a board-to-board thing. I'm not in favor of creating a Camden task force just because Rockport has voted to create a task force. I do think this is a decision that we need to come to whether or not we want Rockport on our system, and if we do, under what auspices. And that's a board decision. And I think we can make that decision if we focus on it and get the information and educate ourselves to the degree that we need to make a decision.
Do you think that doing that in a conversation, as a result of a conversation with the Rockport board?
Yes.
Is the way to
The
go
starting
about it?
point is to have some meetings with the Rockport board. And as you said right up front, Susan, or Chris, somebody said, clearly defined agenda for the meeting, educational discussion, so that we don't get off task and we make it as efficient as possible, because this is going to be something that could potentially take a lot of time and resources if we let it get too far in that direction.
When are you back, Tom?
Right now, November 2nd.
November 2nd. Okay, so you would be
Yes.
remote.
That's right.
Okay. As far as scheduling, is it realistic to think that we could do something this month?
I believe so. I feel like both boards are motivated to make time.
And how, if we were to schedule, Chris, you probably have the more restrictive schedule than most of us.
Typically my day, at least scheduled with clients, ends with 5 when I'm working on this.
To
goes.
5. So if we were to schedule a Thursday afternoon, I don't know why Thursday. Is there a day that's better?
Where did Thursday come from?
I don't know, my head.
Oh,
I don't know.
Not a big fan of the planning
No,
board?
I don't know. I don't know why I thought Thursday, there may be a day. In my conversation with Denise, she seemed to think Thursday, but I don't know that was hard and fast on her side either.
We seem to be able to make Tuesday evenings at 6:30 work.
Yeah, well, that's true. So we've got Tuesday, we've got the 3rd and then the 17th.
Yeah, we've done other things where we've had relevant select board meetings start earlier than the select board typically, and then going with a
Well, that's
shorter,
true.
and then going with a shorter agenda of the select board, so that in case the first meeting runs, let's say 5:30
Yeah.
to 5:30 to 7 for the Rockport Select Board, and then adjust the Camden Select Board
Yeah.
meeting to be strictly 7 to 9 or
The
something. to
the
that
only
effect.
thing is that the next meeting on the 17th is the day of that MMA workshop, which I'm signed up to go to, and we were going to discuss that if anybody else was planning to go to that. So I would just,
Is that the required workshop?
it's not required, but it's recommended, and I'm going to go to it. So perhaps to not combine it with a select board meeting for the first time, and then we could look at that going forward. But if we were to go
Does it
to
have to be the next one? Let's maybe more to the, maybe October?
Maybe it has to be October.
Or the 24th.
or the 24th, Tuesday, the 24th, how do people feel about that? At 5 or 5:30?
5:30
5:30,
is my preference, if I can state a preference for me.
of course. How does that sound, Audra? Does that sound workable?
Yep.
Hold on, Tom, we like Tom participating. Does the time difference, should we be considering that?
No, don't make that a
I
factor.
know, but it's
Just-
really
just-
great having
just-
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But set the agenda and I'll do my best to be there, or set the
Okay.
meeting.
Is earlier better, though?
I would think so,
Yes.
right? I mean, it's gotta be
Just
better. I mean,
So 5:30 is better than 6:30.
Yes.
Yeah, 5:30.
and we could keep a really short,
Yeah,
The
Business
select board
meeting?
meeting, yeah.
yeah.
easy to say.
So Tuesday, September 24th at 5:30.
Yes.
We're looking at a combined. And can that invitation come from your office? Okay.
Yep, I can work with John Duke to,
Okay.
set the date and make sure everybody gets invitations.
Okay,
And your original suggestion was to establish a baseline, have a presentation from each. And I like the idea of starting with a common baseline from both
A
parties.
brief, 5
Yeah.
minutes.
And I think
It could be
that,
5 minutes. That
it's got to
seems
be more than that.
unrealistic.
It's not 5 minutes.
Remember, we just got, some
I
of us
know.
got that presentation about sort of the state of affairs, and some of us didn't. I think it's one of those things too, where if not everybody can be there for the whole thing, we all kind of have different needs or interests in how much information we get.
Yeah.
But I don't see how I'm all,
No, it's not
I'm
gonna
all
be-
for
it's not
making
gonna be 5
information, but
minutes.
it's
Yeah.
more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And if
Well-
possible, we could have information ahead of time,
I'm looking, to-
yeah.
look over.
Because a lot of this, by virtue of the fact that we had to, prepare a lot of it, to kind of get ready for the bond, it's ready to go.
Right.
And we have additional, information that we've gathered over a summer of investigation and planning work. So, we can have like a packet prepared for both select boards, and I guess, it's more about, do we think that we can get to both towns sort of, kind of state of play in one night?
I would hope that we could get it done really fast. I mean, as Tom said, this is the capacity, this is the gazintas, this is the gazatas. And the data points, we don't need a long discussion of the Pearl Street project or something else, or some of the other pieces in trying to make this less onerous for department heads to have to do a lengthy presentation when there's already been.
I know, but I guess
plenty
if we can't get you all to a point where everyone understands the basics, then we're not going to be able to resolve some of these more complex issues. And I just don't want to take for granted what everybody knows. Things like, the sewer sheds, a lot of people don't understand how those work and how they go to pump stations and what that, where it's coming from and how much there is. And,
Well, I think in the
What's in
interest
the
of,
effluent, there's
Yeah,
there's
I mean-
lots we don't even know yet that
Yeah.
nobody's asked, and
how much
It's gonna be a
of our
decider for some
plant
people.
capacity is eaten up by I&I versus actual wastewater, all those kinds of
how much
things.
do we
So,
care about PFAS
just
on
in the
harbor?
interest of moving this agenda item along, and we've got folks that came to discuss something else, let's get this on the calendar. We know that we should schedule at least an hour, I would say an hour and a half.
Mhm.
And then we'll look at subsequent meetings and just start to chip away at this.
Right.
And it's not a one and done, given the complexity of the conversation. But if we can all agree on September 24th at 5:30, and then we'll be working to draft an agenda and circulate that for everybody to look at before we walk through the door, then I think that'll be a great start.
Mhm.
Okay?
Yeah, thanks, Susan.
Thank you. All right, now we come to the moment you've all been waiting for.
It wasn't the warrant?
Discussion item, no. The neighborhood rat infestation and local health officer response. Should we start off hearing from,
So I can kind of set the table for this. So this has been a summer, and Drexel White is joining us here from Maine CDC. Thank you so much, Drexel, for hanging in there with us. So he's here to answer any questions that the state CDC, who's a resource to the town for issues when we have rodent infestations, as well as other public health issues. They provide support to our local health officer. So our local health officer is Chief Farley. And, there's a number of sort of public health issues that could happen in a town that would require our local health officer to become involved. Rodent infestations being one of them, but there are, several other types of issues that they address. And they go about it very similarly to how a code enforcement officer does it, where they, will inspect. They'll, find sort of the source of it at a property. They'll work with the property owner on, remediation plans. So, we really have to go through a very similar process to what a code enforcement officer would do if they find some sort of, violation. So it's, always trying to get voluntary compliance and getting property owners to work with us on remediating the issue before we take enforcement action. So just wanted to kind of set that as the background before we get into any of the issues that have been dealt with. And in terms of rodent infestations, while there's one issue on Chestnut Hill Street that the residents have written to the select board and other town staff, so I think a lot of people are aware of it. There are several other rodent infestations around town that have come about over the summer, and the residents have contacted Chief Farley to look at them. And I think Drexel has probably even more insight into others in other parts of the state, as well as ones that have come to his attention as well in Camden. So that's the background. Chief Farley is here to answer any sort of specific questions on areas in town that he's been addressing this issue and how he's gone about it. And I believe Drexel's been to Camden as well to look at some of the sites and offer recommendations as well.
So can we start off with an update from Chief Farley as to remediation and compliance and where that stands? Having read through all the letters, I've seen proposed plans and.
So if your question is specifically about Chestnut Hill, because as Audra said, Chestnut Hill is the one that has received the most attention, but I have also looked into issues on Cove Road this summer, Union Street, Molyneux Road, and Pearl Street, Oak Street.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And then there are a
And
lot of
as
people
I
that
was
never
talking
come to the
with
town.
Stuart
Right.
Young down at the Windjammer Festival on Friday, my back was to Commercial Street, and Stuart was looking up Commercial Street, and he said, "There's a rat running back and forth across the street between the Chamber of Commerce building and the
Oh, joy.
galleries." And I'm not making light of it, but they live amongst us.
Yeah.
Chestnut Hill, granted, is a significantly different situation. I met with the Chestnut Hill neighbors back in a couple of weeks ago. We met down at the Public Safety Building to kind of chat about what happened and where we were. So the issue on Chestnut Hill came to our attention in 2018. We met with the property owner, developed a remediation plan. The issue remediated itself because of actions he took. The issue came up again in 2020. And again, as Audra said, I consult with Drexel as well as Bill Kelly when the situation comes up, particularly this particular one on Chestnut Hill. So each time it happens, I consult with Drexel and with Bill to decide how we're going to move forward. So 2020, we developed a remediation plan. The plan was conformed with, and as part of that remediation plan, as Bill's suggestion was, I met with the property owner once a week from June of 2020 until April of 2021. So weekly visits, and we stopped the visits in the spring of 2021 because there were no more rats. In June, one of the neighbors, downhill neighbors from 11 Chestnut Hill, brought it to my attention again. I contacted Bill and I contacted Drexel. I contacted the property owner. I went to the property several times, June and July. One of my visits in July, there were a lot of rats on the property. I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on. I went there today. I went this morning. The property owner has conformed with the vast majority of things we have in the NOV, and I did not see any rats on the property this morning. There's no feeding taking place. A lot of the fallen limbs were cleaned up, wood piles were cleaned up, burrow holes were filled in, and one of the things that we asked them to do was contract with a licensed exterminator, and he had done that. There were bait boxes around the property. I didn't see any rats today.
Do you have, oh, go ahead.
How common is that an issue such as rats is so localized to a given, I mean, you mentioned like 4 or 5 different areas. I mean, to me, I would just think they would just kind of spread naturally, but I don't know about rats. Educate us on why it can be so localized here.
I think Drexel might be in a better position to do that. I didn't know a whole lot about rats either, but rats need habitat, they need cover from predators, they need food, and they need water. And they have a reproductive cycle, which is at the top of the charts. So they can.
Are you able to talk about some of the other remediation efforts of what was going on and what was stopped or not? I understand if you can't.
Well,
what made Chestnut Hill special? What caused such a condensed population, you think?
Probably the volume of feed that was made available through bird feeding.
You read some
really?
articles back from the bird feeding ordinance a few years back. There's an ordinance that was passed partially as a response to this, also just a best practice in terms of not feeding the ducks downtown. But when we started talking about that, this issue came to light where there was a very organized herring gull feeding operation with the same person. And so there was a lot of discussion of it back then, and seems to be the reemergence.
Yeah, so it's a combination of the bird feeding as well as habitat. The property owner there has planted a lot of trees and shrubs around the property, allows them to grow in, which has caused, I know the Rogers are here, and recently they abut the property and they have an adjacent lot on and on Cedar Street, and they recently had Tom Jackson's crew come in and clear a lot of that out, which reduced the cover and the habitat and made the rats more, susceptible to predators. Whereas before they could easily take cover and hide.
As far as the other infestations in town, is there something that Drexel could sort of enlighten us about as far as a strategy?
So some of the Pearl Street, Oak Street, that was the accessibility. Well, that was Applewood Apartments, and they weren't using the dumpsters like they should have been used. Garbage was thrown outside the dumpsters. So I contacted the property management company there, and we had a conversation about how the tenants should be disposing of their trash and making sure it gets in the dumpsters. The dumpsters are closed, kept closed. And so once that took place, the population there declined.
And the others that are closer to the Cove Road and?
In Cove Road, bird feeding
Mm-hmm.
and cover.
I mean, there are also tons of, all over the place where they just people don't contact the town. I know when the middle school got demolished, there was a colony that sort of relocated. But they do say they stay in a relatively close proximity to where they live. I mean, they're Watson Harbor Park. I see them swimming in the river sometimes.
Surprisingly,
they hide.
150 to 250 feet is their typical range, and sometimes 400 feet. So I do know a little bit more than.
Yeah.
So Templeton never went to the fair.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, I don't want to get up there, Chris still has things to say, but I do have some things that.
Sure.
Yeah, Chris, don't go far.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief Farley.
My name is Jim Nelson. I live at 5 Cedar Street in Camden. Just a comment that popped in my head during this discussion. Until 1999, we lived in Boston, which has some rats, and they recruit volunteers to work on the problem. My wife was then known as the rat lady because she had a team and we did counts and stuff. And we learned some things from rat experts in Boston. If you want to get rid of rats, you have to eliminate the food source, period. It's pretty simple, okay, if you can do that. Now, this is what I came to say. I was at the town meeting, and by the way, I respect your time, and I'm not going to take much of it. Okay.
You've been very patient waiting for us to get to you as
Okay.
well, so thank you.
I was at the town meeting in 2016 when the bird feeding ordinance was passed. So and we didn't get to that ordinance for a number of years. So this goes back further than 2018. It's back around 2014, somewhere around there. There were people who voted against the ordinance that night. My reading of their comments was they weren't against the concept of preventing feeding. It was sort of the Camden way to solve these problems is neighbor to neighbor, not through laws. Okay. I want to tell you, there have been multiple neighbor to neighbor approaches. I was a part of one myself. It was very civil. It was trying to solve it in a very neighborly way. So we're gone to 2014. This is now 2024. That's a 10-year period. I have Chris's email that we got from him. This is dated August 2nd of this year. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I am not surprised people are seeing so many rodents. When I walked around yesterday, I have never seen as many rodents on the property as I did then. It was nauseous from my experience. Okay. And it's not just us who are here. There's a lot of neighbors here. Pat and I have lived here since 2014. Within a 2-year period, we're going to sell our house and downsize, and some of that value is going to be used for our retirement. As you probably know, when you list your home, you have to make disclosures about any problems about the house. We don't really think it's fair, and we have a right to be able to sell our house for fair market value without this kind of problem needing to be disclosed to people. The other comment I want to give, I was at the meeting in Chris's office or the fire station, and Tom Jackson, the landscape owner, was there. And he said that his employees, I can't do a direct quote, but I'm sure it's a fair representation. His employees do not want to work in the area anymore. And that's not on the offending feeder's property. That's in the general area around. So it's it's got a bigger effect than just the homeowners. And it's been 10 years. It goes like this, like he reported, he said he didn't see any rats. If it's left unattended, we've got a 10-year history of this repeating itself and getting at very high levels in this August. And I tell you, we've reached the point where we've got to elevate the activity here. We can't go on like this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Anyone else? Yeah.
I didn't really prepare anything because I didn't know how it was going to be brought up. My name is Dee Dee Steele, and I bought the property below the neighbor on Chestnut Hill Street. And this whole summer, since the beginning of June, possibly late in May, I came into the office to report the volume of rats that I was seeing on my property. And it was disgusting. I mean, I live right below this neighbor. I knew nothing about the past history, but, and one of the questions I have, I'll get to, but I have not been out in my backyard. It's a nice fenced-in backyard, but I have not been out in that backyard since the beginning of June, and it's now August. And I have a dog that I can't let out, mainly because the rats urinate, and I'm very worried about it. And plus, I'd love to garden, but I can't because, again, I don't want to get sick. Rats carry diseases. And this neighbor has been feeding crows from his porch adjacent to my property. And I don't know how long this remedial plan is in state for. So the minute he clears up, it's been checked out and it's okay and he's done everything. What happens next? He starts feeding again. I don't know maybe that's coming, possibly, I don't know. But this remedial plant was in place before and it's now in place, but he's, after 3 years or after they stopped monitoring, he started up again. So I would like to know, and I too, don't want to live there. I bought the house with my brother, and this year has really grossed me out. I mean, I just can't tell you. And you guys cringe when we bring up the word rat, but that I have to look at it every day. And I will say the remedial plan has worked to a certain. I don't see the rats right now. But the minute he starts feeding again, he can't help himself. And I'm wondering if there's some way that the town could go to his family, ask if he needs a guardianship. I know that there was some talk of getting help for him. I think he just can't help but feed the birds. So I just would like to know, number one, is it safe? I read today that it takes 3 months for rat infestations, once they've cleared, for it to be safe to be out on your property. So that's a question to either you or Drexel White. So I just want it to stop long-term.
Of course.
And again, if I try to sell my property, it's not worth anything. I don't think I'll be able to sell it. So I don't want to take too much time, and I'm kind of blabbering, but.
No, I really appreciate it. We've got to take all this into consideration.
I will say that the town manager and Chris Farley have been working very hard on it, but to have to go to a lawyer, I reported in June, and then we have to go through a lawyer. He doesn't get served the papers till the end of July, and rats are like guppies, so I think you get my point.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to hear from Mr. White, who has waited very patiently and I'm sure has some wisdom.
Thank you. I don't know if I really have a lot to add. First I'll say I think Chief Farley has done a good job, and as was mentioned early on, that we try to approach any of these situations as informally as possible, and that was tried, and ultimately it took notice of violation to gain compliance with this individual. When we look at rat infestations, and as Chief Farley has probably discussed with you, there's the source, dealing with the source, and that is textbook. You need food, water, and habitat for a rat to be present. And if you can break that cycle, you can decrease it. So we look at the source, and we also look at the other neighboring properties that are affected by it, and are there steps that neighbors can take. I think it was mentioned that one neighbor cleared away some brush or growth to take care of to lessen the habitat. So it really is, it's a combined effort to take care of the issue. And I do agree with the comments that were made just from the history of it, that there needs to be, some type of, or there should be some type of, continued monitoring of the property. I think the chief mentioned in his letter that the individual has a year-long contract with an extermination company. That's certainly a step in the right direction.
Great, thank you. Any other questions Allison?
Yeah, just quickly, has there been any evidence that, I understand that rats cause all kinds of problems, but is there any evidence that these rats are carrying any type of disease? Has it risen to that level where any of them have? I know that gets said, and how concerned do we need to be about that?
Oh, I think there's always there is that concern, is that, rats can carry a variety of different diseases. So there has been no testing done, and usually what you do is you eradicate, mitigate the situation. But, there's been nothing reported as anybody, contracting any disease. If there were, we have an epidemiology section that would, that would follow up with the individual and the medical provider. And at this point, I've heard, nothing of that.
Are there instances in the state where they are testing positive for something, or is this more just sort of hypothetical, like it could happen, but
right. I mean, you would have to have a specific, disease process, and then, it would need to be tied back to, a rat issue. And I'm not aware of it. And I haven't, my epidemiologist hasn't mentioned anything to that effect. I would be happy to go back to her and ask that question for you.
I'm wondering also, and I see you, I'll get right to you. As the main property is mitigating, does this create more of an issue for the abutting properties? I mean, they're going to go somewhere. They're not all going to be killed. And with the reproduction and so on, that, I'm concerned for surrounding properties as mitigation happens on the subject property. What?
I can say that on Cedar Street today, across Cedar Street, I saw 2 chipmunks, and the neighbors told me they hadn't seen chipmunks, and chipmunks are actually something that the rats will go after for food. So I saw chipmunks today. But I mean, obviously, right?
But,
yeah.
What's that?
Sorry.
I mean, you're right. They have to.
I'm kidding.
They're going to go somewhere. I look for feedback from folks in the neighborhood. I didn't say I watched the Rogers property today as well. I've seen them on the Rogers property in the past. I didn't see any there today.
Mhm.
But they've
Mhm.
also had, I think, Tom's crew come in and clear out the growth.
Yeah,
So there's
yeah.
no cover.
They are scared of dogs. I've had some experiences with rats on friends' properties, and they leave their dogs out, and they, the rats. So different. I understand there is, concern about disease or things, but I just want to make sure that's not overblown, because some of the typical things of just scaring away these creatures. When I see a rat in Harbor Park, it runs away. But I know this is an elevated situation, but
Yeah,
Can I have a couple minutes?
please, please.
A little more on the history. Probably 10 years ago or so, John was feeding hundreds of seagulls on his roof and crows, and people had to put spikes on the roof. If you go in our neighborhood, they replaced their roofs, many other things. But it wasn't just in his property and so forth. He was feeding at the yacht club. He was feeding downtown. He was caused a rat problem over on the farm, on the trails in the farm. Rockport has banned him. He was putting things down on the rest. He goes in, he's around 5 o'clock in the morning. He'd be carrying a whole sled or a backpack full of bird feed. And he gets his peanuts. We see him 150 pounds at a time being delivered in his driveway. And it's not only the rats. We've had 8 years of crows at 5:30 in the morning we have to listen to. And what he's done now, he's filling his holes. I put a just to check on the edge of my property. I borrowed my son's thing a month ago, his thing on my property, and I set it too high. It was strictly on my property, and John was there at 5:30 in the morning with a light, scraping and filling rat holes in my property, which are just sending them back up. Several winters ago, when we had that really bad infestation, and you have pictures of the rats running around him in the snow, we had them climbing up a copper pipe that went into to feed the kitchen for propane, and they found a little hole there. Come fall, they're going to be trying to get in the houses again. We've had them in the houses. The neighbors have. It's a problem. But it's not only going to be that lot, because I don't think you can stop them from feeding elsewhere.
Mr. Nelson. Oh, I'm sorry, Marty, did you want to?
no, Jim.
Okay, and then you come ahead. Sorry about that.
I just want to add, if he stops feeding, we're not worried about the rats going to adjacent properties. They're going to have to go to some other source. They'll be gone. That's not a problem. Okay. The second thing, I don't think you were saying we have to prove a rat has a disease for this to be a problem. Is it?
Oh, no.
No.
I was just wondering, like, if in terms of people that might be listening to this, if they, should be keeping I understand why some people might choose to keep their animals inside or not want to get, I would be very, very scared if I saw a rat. I understand. But just in terms of somebody listening to this I didn't want them to think that that they would have to do that, or that they might want to, keep letting their dog be outside, or I just wanted to clarify if we do know.
The thing I hope the select board will take to heart is this is a 10-year, a decade-long problem. It's not about solving the rat problem next week or even next month. This requires a solution. We've been putting up with it for a long, long time. It's not healthy. It's not good for a town like Camden to have this kind of problem, and it needs to be fixed in a way that it will stay fixed. Thank you.
I mean, I was involved in crafting the ordinance. I was there for, I do support that for all kinds of reasons.
Marty, please.
Marty Rogers, and I live on Chestnut Street. I just support everything that everyone has said. And I want to say thank you to Chris for, supporting us with our complaints, especially this latest round, because it has been far worse than anything we have seen in the past. In his report, he said, I think that the CDC, Drexel, may have said that he shouldn't be on the property without a hazmat suit and an N5 mask. Take precautions. It's not a surprise to me that the landscapers employees have said, I don't want to work on those properties where there are rats. And I do know that a neighbor across the street on Chestnut Hill has reported to me that she now has seen rats, and she had not seen any earlier. She's got them under her porch and around her house, her foundation. So I just say, please, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Dee Dee?
I'll stand back here. I think that.
Nobody can
Okay,
hear
we
her.
can't hear
Yeah, we can't hear you.
You asked a question about the dog and going out, and was that an, overkill? I asked Tom Jackson if I should let the dog out. He's the landscaper. And he said, I don't know. I wouldn't risk it. And today I Googled rat infestations and how long it takes to uncontaminate a property. And if it's a bad contamination, it's 3 months. If it's not so bad, it's a month. So there have been also, ABC News had research on the uptake of diseases in New York City because of the garbage. And I think if you study a little bit about all the diseases, I hope we don't have to wait until Camden does have an epidemiology report reporting these diseases. I think we need to be taken seriously. And I'm so relieved not to see rats on my property for the last week, but I have a feeling that they've traveled other places. So maybe not. But again, I'm grateful for these two, and don't want to take any more time. But I think it's very, very serious. And I think if you do your homework on rats and what they cause, it would be helpful to all of us. Thanks.
Thank you. So I guess my question now is, are we doing everything we can? And is there anything that we can do in order to really help solidify this? I mean, what I'm hearing is this sort of cyclical nature, and that we've reached a real tipping point where neighbors don't want to be enduring this any longer. Do we have any other tools at our disposal in order to come up with a more permanent strategy?
So I think that, Bill and I talked in Drexel that after my observations today, Bill and I are going to chat tomorrow if he's in, or sometime soon. And we'll probably go back to what we did back in 2020 and 21 and make regular weekly visits to the property and check in with them regularly. Audra and I have chatted, and Drexel and I have chatted about finding what other resources we can find for the property owner to help, come to the root of the issue and come up with some long-term solutions.
So I was going to say, if we were in a different situation where there wasn't compliance with the notice of violation and the remediation plan, we would come back to you and we'd, there'd be other legal action that we could move forward with. But, every time we've gotten to this point, there's been compliance. So I think it's really just what Chris said, which is just continuing the weekly check-ins and trying to offer other services and hope that at some point they're taken by the resident there.
Allison?
I do think it's important to also mention that there are drawbacks to rat poisoning. I really like the emphasis on the food sources, and maybe just educating people about that. Maybe it would make sense to send out something in the mail to people within a certain distance of the property, just as an educational thing, saying there have been rats in the neighborhood, and we would recommend that you keep all food sources secure, and because there are probably people that aren't really paying attention to all of this. And from what I've learned, reducing the food sources as much as possible is great. I was reading this article about the percentage of, they did a study on the percentage of red-tailed hawks that were admitted to wildlife rehabilitation centers for different problems, and they tested them for the presence of anticoagulant rodenticides, and something like 97% of the birds had this present in their system. So, the more we can do on the prevention side of it through food, the lack of food, the better. I struggle a little with the idea of let's try to do more and more and more and more and more, and let's think about the.
And I guess to bring this back to the herbicide, pesticide discussion that we've been having, that's if we talk about like a ban of pesticides, that would sweep in rodenticides as well. And I know we talked about that before, but it's just something to consider.
Well, and I know a lot of people have engaged the scrap dogs for compost rather than having compost in the yard, because that's a really attractive food source as well. So, anything else? Do you have one final comment or?
Do any of the other of the select persons have a comment on this issue? One, you haven't said anything.
No.
Anything else that you?
I mean, certainly nobody is a fan of rats, and I'm glad that it is getting taken care of. And I'm curious to make sure that not just that area, but other areas, it doesn't become a problem. Certainly,
nice
I'm
to
glad that
hear
it's getting worked on.
that there is. I did hear of a problem on Hosmer Pond a few years ago, but it was localized. Somebody was throwing garbage in their garage and just leaving
Damn.
it there.
Huh.
So it's nice to know that there is a cause, remove the cause, and you're well on the way to a solution.
And Tom would like to weigh in.
I would, thank you. So my question is there was a notice of violation on the property. Is that a standing notice of violation?
Do you mean?
Or once he's in compliance, does that notice of violation expire? Or does it remain in place?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that's probably part of the reason why we're here right now, right? Because we stopped checking up on it. And Tom, that's something I will, check on with Bill Kelly when I chat with Bill about it is, how do we make that a standing, how do we make those standing requirements?
I think that's the best path moving forward, is to continue to set this expectation for the person who feeds the birds.
Yeah.
And it might be hard for some folks here, and I've tried to, and I believe I have developed a rapport with him so that I think that's the best way to help make some change there, is to have a positive working relationship with him. And I do think that he wants to put the effort in to make the change. I mean, I asked, this time when I asked him to stop feeding birds and putting food out, he stopped the next day. Haven't seen any since then. So I do think he wants to.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was very different before. There was, articles and letters to the editor really pushing back on that idea. I'm sure you can find some of it still on the internet.
Yeah.
So it does sound like.
Well,
there's
I
gonna change.
appreciate your effort and your willingness to create a rapport to, create some trust and move that along. And I wanted this to be on the agenda because your concerns keep coming up in our emails, and I want you to know that it's concerning to us as well. And to the extent that we can, we'll stay vigilant and, use whatever tools we have available, and don't hesitate to keep us informed as to what you're seeing in your yards, because it really will, I think it will inform how we proceed. But I think to have a standing notice violation and to maintain that relationship is going to be key to keeping the situation under wraps. But I really appreciate your patience in coming forward. It's not a topic we want to have to be discussing, but we care very much for what you're experiencing, about what you're experiencing. So thank you. Okay. So it looks like our final discussion item is regarding the Maine Municipal Association workshop on September 17th, which is the same day as our next meeting. But I've signed up to go because I know that they're always informative, and it's always interesting to meet elected officials from other towns. And but as of this date, no. Ken, are you interested in going? Or
I am interested. I have not registered yet.
Okay.
I'm hoping I still can, but we have a meeting that day. So are you leaving that meeting early to come to this one?
Oh,
Because
that's why this is on the agenda. That makes
yeah,
sense. Okay.
yeah, because I wanted to,
that's what I'll
Chris
have to do.
would chair the meeting, but if there are going to be two of us gone, then can we still have a meeting?
Yeah, as long as
Or-
there's three.
As long as there are three, so we would have Tom and.
That seems kind
Would
of
you-
funny, like, when you think about it, like,
What?
we're gonna disrupt I think the quality of our select board meetings are better when, I'm fine with Tom and Chris and maybe we can decide which topics we might like to handle alone, but I don't know. I don't know, that seems odd.
I-
What's the harm in skipping?
I was thinking of going, attending online, attending the MMA thing, and then just leaving at 6:30. They won't be done, but
Well, leaving at 5:30 in order to be back here. by
no, I'll
6:30.
be on. I'll do it on the. There's an option to do
Oh.
it.
They
on
finally
screen.
have the online option. They used to be like, well, you can go to
Right.
Calais or you can go to Portland.
Right.
But now they have the online thing. I've done the online thing. I do agree with Susan, though, that when I go to these conferences, it is kind of enjoyable to chat with other people. So you kind of made me want to.
So
go.
you're
It's been a
thinking
while
that you
since
would
I've been.
do it that we could do it online? I would do it online if it seems like it would be really disruptive to our process here to not have a meeting or to have a meeting with three people.
What would be the harm of having our meeting on the 24th after the meeting with Rockport, which is also a Tuesday night, to then have a shorter meeting of the select board? If we go with a limited agenda, we're meeting with Rockport, let's say 5:30 to 7.
Oh,
Is there
changing our meeting to the.
To the 24th?
to the 24th, the same as we're having the other one? To
Oh,
me,
right,
I like the idea of consolidating. It's
Yeah.
fewer days.
Yeah, no.
I actually kind of thought that is what we were doing, but I forgot we didn't actually discuss changing the
No harm.
select board meeting too. That makes lots of sense to me. That's.
I had it wrong on my calendar, that's why.
Oh.
And I mean, we really can hold off on anything
Yeah, let's-
that isn't sort of a business item that needs to be voted on.
Yeah.
And since we have less liquor licenses in general, it's very unlikely you'll have much at all.
Agenda.
I think it'll really just be the vitular license for the business it was in tonight for their liquor license
Okay.
The totality of what would be on the agenda?
that
I
you'd
think there are a
really
few
need
other-
to vote on.
On the 17th.
Right. Everything else could probably,
I thought we were moving it to the 24th.
Well,
Right,
she's
that's what
saying,
she's
but the
saying. It
harm in
won't be a
doing
heavy
that.
meeting. So if we combine it with the Rockport meeting,
On
then
the
we'll have a
24th.
light, yeah, so we can meet with Rockport at 5:30 and then at 6:30 or 6:45, begin our meeting,
Seven.
but we'll have a light agenda.
Right,
I
just
literally thought that's already. what
business
we were-
items
I
you need to
just-
take action on.
Yeah.
The Rockport meeting is going to run 2 hours anyway, so let's not think that it's going to start.
I was thinking, I was
That's a good-
thinking ours
good
would
point.
start at 7, an hour and a half, and just limit it. Sorry, it's the
Yeah.
time that we
Yeah,
have.
yeah, but no.
Can we do that? Just have our meeting start at 7?
Yes.
Okay.
5:30 is a 7 for Rockport and 7 for the rest.
I think
I mean,
Ken's-
if it goes late, it goes late, I guess.
He probably is.
Well, going late is fine with us, but we got to put something on the calendar and have the setup and have our
Right.
audience. So I would say that it's really ambitious to think that we'll be done in less than 2 hours when we first
Let's
meet
start
with
at 5.
Rockport.
We haven't seen the agenda yet.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
well,
we
We start at 5
We'll
and go
make
to
it-
7?
I could do that, I think.
Yeah, why don't we
5.
look at
Yeah,
5?
I might be a little late.
Maybe we
Um,
could start with the
start at 5.
presentation because you've already seen some of it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So if we look at 5 o'clock on the
and then we're going to need to be able to just like drink of
24th.
water or something in between, hopefully. But
Well, yeah.
Yeah, a snack. We'll need a snack. These meetings, I get hungry and then I'm too hungry when I get home too.
Mhm.
So if we say 5 o'clock on the 24th, and then we'll have our meeting following that.
Mhm.
Okay. I like it. All
But
right.
that only harms the people going for the license though by a week.
Oh,
That's what that was
Yeah.
Audra's point, is that we'd be
Oh,
harming
that was
them.
Audra's point. Okay.
well, I mean, no, yeah.
We could always do like a quick, just remember how we used to do these things during the pandemic? We'd all get together on Zoom for one thing.
You
'cause
could,
we
you
needed to, like,
could do a meeting on the 10th just to approve licenses.
If there's
So do
something that
they
is
already
urgent.
have the application submitted?
I believe that it was either submitted on Friday or today.
Okay.
That was these people that we just,
Yeah, we wouldn't
so
want
they have to come back again, get more approval.
For their vitular, yes.
So crazy that we're doing this at all, but.
Yeah.
You don't want to harm that.
I'm gonna let the rest of you all decide, and I'm gonna go along with it. But that sounds fine. I think if there's-
Yeah, we don't want to hold them up.
No, just because we go to a.
But if
a
it is
meeting.
urgent, we have a way of quickly convening something for one
Yeah.
purpose, I believe.
Yeah,
Yes, you do.
We can be a little more flexible sometimes. Look at how Tom's
Look at how
participating.
Tom, he's on the other side of the ocean in the
can-
middle of the night.
Right.
For heaven's sake.
Yes, so would you like to leave, Tuesday, the 10th open in case there's a license that needs, and it's just that
Yeah,
item?
The
Yep.
17th.
The
The
10th?
10th.
I'm
Yes, next
obviously not
Tuesday.
following along.
Because we can't do the 17th because that's
Right,
when this thing
right,
is.
right, right.
So the
Oh,
only
right.
other,
So
other
Tuesday
way
the
to do
10th
that is a
So
week from
Tuesday the
now.
10th, we
Or
could
even,
have it.
God forbid, a Thursday afternoon for a quick,
Yeah.
but yes, I'm fine.
Once you have, so I guess once the application is in,
You have to have
do we have to have a
24 hours.
notice of that meeting?
It'll be enough, just like a 24-hour notice.
Okay.
Because it's
No
not-
public hearing.
it's so crazy. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Liquor licenses are the only thing that need public hearings.
Okay.
So we can be quick with that.
Okay.
The idea that we are the ones that look at this Vittler, oh, I guess they can open, 'cause
Yeah,
I'm so
I know.
experienced in,
Right.
Vittler things.
Not a lot of sense. Okay, so we established that. So to wrap that up, I personally I'm going to go in person to this MMA conference.
To
And
which location?
It's in Augusta.
It's in Augusta.
Yeah.
Oh,
So if anyone would like to go with me, I'd be delighted to have your company, and I think it would be fun. So if you decide that you want to sign up and do it in person, since we've moved our meeting,
I probably do
delighted
that, but
for
I'll
us
be in
to go
touch with
together.
you.
what's that?
I'll be in touch with you about
Okay.
carpooling.
Brilliant.
And let me know because we, of course, it gets paid for through the town.
Town pays for it.
Yes.
We'll
Should I
register
send
you.
you an email confirming? Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Anybody
all three
else
of us
too.
can't drive together
Right.
unless we live stream it.
Oh, my gosh.
Sorry.
Oh, my
I'm
God.
gonna-
All right, on that note, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. And a
Seconded.
second. Thank you. All those in favor? That would be me. Tom, thank you again.
Good night, everybody.
Take good care. Good
Thank you,
night.
Tom.
Thank you. Thank you.